Listen carefully, because what I'm about to share is not for everyone. This is an urgent and weighty message, and it is meant only for God's chosen ones. If you do not walk the divine path, if your heart is not aligned with God, then this message is not for you. You may leave now. But if you are a true follower of Christ, if you have felt the quiet pull of God on your life, then stay with me. This message has reached you at the exact right moment. Not early, not late, perfectly on time. And it will change the way you see your life. Chosen one, there has been a hidden war around your bloodline. What they tried to do to your family is not new. It happened before. It happened to King David. They tried to erase his lineage before the promise could fully rise. And in many ways, they tried the same with you. Stay with me till the end, because today you will finally understand why your life felt targeted, why your family went through so much, and why you are still standing when you should not be. Before we continue, chosen ones, give a like to this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, tap the bell icon, and share this message with other chosen ones who need this truth. And comment 777 in the comments to declare that you are aligned with God's divine purpose for your life. Section 2. When heaven marks a bloodline, hell responds. Now listen to me slowly, and let these words settle in your spirit. Nothing about your life has been accidental, nothing about your family story has been random. When heaven places a mark on a bloodline, hell never stays silent. It always responds. Quietly at first, subtly, over time. And many chosen ones spend years confused, asking themselves why life felt harder than it should have been, why struggle showed up early, and why peace always seemed delayed. But today, I want to remove that confusion. A bloodline is more than shared DNA. In God's design, a bloodline carries assignment, memory, and spiritual authority. Scripture shows us this again and again. God does not just call individuals, He marks generations. He plants promises into family lines. And when that happens, opposition begins long before the promise becomes visible. The enemy understands something many people don't. If he can interrupt the bloodline, he can delay the assignment. That is why some of you felt pressure before you even understood faith. You were carrying weight without language for it. You were sensing resistance before you knew what resistance was. And because no one explained this to you, you thought something was wrong with you. Let me say this clearly and hear it without fear. Nothing was wrong with you. Something was right with you. And that is exactly why the resistance came. The enemy never attacks empty vessels. He never invests energy into lives without destiny. Hell does not waste resources. So if your family history looks chaotic, if patterns of loss, division, addiction, betrayal, or early death show up again and again, that is not proof of curse alone. Very often it is proof of calling under attack. What you call dysfunction, heaven often calls interruption. And interruption only happens when something valuable is moving through the line. This is where many chosen ones misunderstand their story. You were taught to blame yourself, to blame your parents, to blame your background. But spiritual truth demands a higher lens. The enemy does not start with you. He starts before you. He studies bloodlines. He watches prayer patterns. He observes obedience. And when he sees a family that carries spiritual sensitivity, leadership potential, or future influence, he plans early disruption. That is why some of you grew up too fast. Childhood was shortened. Innocence was interrupted. You learned survival early, not because God wanted to harden you, but because protection was already in motion. Heaven does not leave chosen bloodlines uncovered. But protection does not always look like comfort. Sometimes it looks like resilience forming quietly under pressure. Let me talk to your heart for a moment. Many of you have asked God in private, Why did my family have to go through this? Why couldn't I come from a normal home? Why did peace feel unfamiliar? And God is not offended by those questions. He understands them. But he also sees what you couldn't see back then. He saw that you were being shaped to stand where others would fall. He saw that your spirit could carry truth without becoming bitter. And he knew that one day you would need understanding more than ease. When heaven marks a bloodline, it also places a seal of preservation on at least one carrier. That carrier is often misunderstood, often isolated, often feels like the black sheep. Not because they don't belong, but because they are different. They see differently, they feel differently, they question patterns others accept. And that discomfort you felt growing up, that was your spirit refusing to settle for what was beneath your calling. The enemy's strategy has always been the same. If he cannot destroy the promise directly, he tries to exhaust the carrier. He applies pressure through family conflict, emotional neglect, financial instability, or repeated loss. Not all at once. Slowly, layer by layer. The goal is not immediate destruction. The goal is weariness. Because a tired chosen one begins to doubt, and a doubting chosen one begins to shrink. But here is the part I need you to hear clearly, and I say this with authority. The fact that you are here right now, listening to this message, means the strategy failed. You may feel tired. You may feel delayed. You may feel like life took more from you than it gave, but you were not destroyed. And that matters more than you realize. Survival itself is evidence of divine interruption. Many attacks were planned that never reached you. Many traps were set that never closed. You don't know how many times heaven stepped in quietly while you were unaware. Some of you were protected through redirection. Doors closed that hurt at the time. Relationships ended that felt unfair. Opportunities disappeared suddenly. And later you realized they would have destroyed you if they had stayed. That was not rejection. That was rescue. When God guards a bloodline, he does not always explain himself. He intervenes, and explanation often comes much later when your spirit is strong enough to understand without breaking. I want to normalize something that many chosen ones feel ashamed to admit. There were moments when you wanted to give up, moments when you questioned God, moments when faith felt heavy instead of comforting. That does not disqualify you. That humanizes you. Even the strongest carriers have moments of fatigue. God never demanded perfection from his chosen. He demanded obedience and trust, even when understanding was incomplete. The enemy hoped that pressure would make you bitter, but instead, it made you reflective. He hoped pain would harden you, but instead, it deepened your compassion. He hoped isolation would break you, but instead, it taught you discernment. This is why the war around your bloodline did not end with you. It shifted. Because once a chosen one becomes aware, the strategy changes. Awareness removes fear, and fear is the enemy's favorite tool. I want you to breathe for a moment. Let your shoulders relax. You don't need to defend your past anymore. You don't need to apologize for surviving. You don't need to explain your sensitivity or strength. Your story makes sense now. The confusion had a cause, the pain had a context, and the pressure had a purpose. Not to destroy you, but to reveal what was already inside you. Heaven marked your bloodline. That is the truth. And hell responded. But heaven always responds last. Section 3. King David's Bloodline Warfare. Now let me take you back not as a history lesson, but as a mirror. Because the story of King David is not just scripture on a page, it is a pattern. And if you listen carefully, you will hear your own life echoing through his. David was marked long before he was crowned. Long before anyone called him king, heaven already knew his name. And that is always how God works. God never waits for public recognition to release private anointing. David was chosen in obscurity, overlooked by his own family, left in the fields while others were presented as worthy. And yet, the oil found him, not because of position, but because of heart. But here is the part many people don't fully sit with. The moment David was anointed, a silent war began. Saul didn't attack David because David had done something wrong. Saul attacked David because David carried something Saul could not stop. David represented the future, and insecure systems always fear the future. Saul tried to kill David repeatedly, not once, not twice, again and again. And David had to run, hide, live in caves, be betrayed by people he trusted. He lost stability before he ever touched the throne. And this is important for you to understand. The enemy tried to destroy David before the promise matured. Because if the carrier is destroyed early, the lineage never gets a chance to grow. Chosen one, this is where your story connects. Some of you were attacked emotionally before you even knew who you were. Some of you faced rejection before you ever stepped into purpose. You were misunderstood early, criticized early, burdened early, just like David. Because the enemy never waits until the promise is visible. He attacks it while it still looks small. What many don't realize is that the attack on David was never just about David. It was about his bloodline. From David's lineage would come kings. From David's lineage would come redemption. The enemy saw further than people around David did. And that is why the attacks were relentless. Saul was not fighting a shepherd boy. He was fighting a destiny that threatened his entire system. Now listen to me closely. The same principle applies to you. The intensity of what your family went through is not random. When the enemy cannot stop the individual, he goes after the family. He creates division. He introduces chaos. He plants confusion. Because if the foundation is shaken, the structure becomes unstable. And many of you grew up in homes where stability was always just out of reach. David's family suffered because of his calling. He was on the run. He was hunted. He was misunderstood. And yet, God preserved him. Not because David was perfect, but because God is faithful to his promises. David made mistakes, serious ones. But even then, God did not revoke the covenant. Why? Because God's promises are rooted in purpose, not performance. That should bring relief to some of you, because you have been hard on yourself. You thought that because you struggled, because you doubted, because you failed at times, maybe God had stepped back. But David's life proves something powerful. God does not abandon chosen ones during weakness. He refines them through it. Let me say something that may challenge your thinking. The caves David hid in were not punishments. They were classrooms. In the caves, David learned discernment. He learned restraint. He learned to trust God without applause. And by the time he stepped into the palace, he had already mastered humility. God was preparing the king while the enemy thought he was delaying him. Chosen one, your delays were not denials. They were preparations. The seasons where nothing made sense were shaping seasons. The isolation you hated was protecting you from premature exposure. If David had become king too early, he would have ruled with immaturity. And if you had stepped into your calling too soon, the weight might have crushed you. The enemy thought that by attacking David's bloodline, he could cancel the promise. But what he didn't understand was this: God had already sealed it. Every attempt to kill David only pushed him closer to divine alignment. Every betrayal sharpened his discernment. Every loss deepened his dependence on God. And when David finally took the throne, he was not just powerful, he was anchored. I want you to hear this in your spirit. What was meant to destroy your bloodline did not work. You are still here. And that alone proves that God intervened. The enemy tried to end the story early, but God extended the chapter. You are living proof that heaven overrides hell's plans. David's bloodline continued despite all the attacks. The enemy failed to erase it. And through that lineage, God fulfilled his greatest promise. This is why your survival matters more than you realize. You are not just an individual. You are a continuation, a carrier, a bridge between what was broken and what will be healed. And just like David, you may not see the full picture yet. You may still be in a cave season, but I assure you, caves are temporary. Promises are permanent. God has not forgotten what He spoke over your bloodline, and He has not forgotten you. The war was real, the attacks were intentional, but preservation was stronger. And just like with David, the story does not end with pursuit. It ends with purpose fulfilled. Section 4. Why they came after your family first. Now, let me speak to you gently, but truthfully. Because this is where many chosen ones carry silent confusion and unspoken pain. You've often wondered why the attack didn't start with you alone, why it seemed to wrap itself around your family, your childhood, your foundation, why the chaos appeared before you even had the strength to understand it. And today, I want to give you clarity without reopening wounds. The enemy understands something most people overlook. If he can damage the environment where a chosen one is formed, he can shape the way that chosen one sees the world. That is why the attack often begins early, before confidence forms, before identity solidifies, before faith has language. The goal is not just harm, it is distortion. If the roots are shaken, the tree grows leaning. Many of you grew up in homes where love felt inconsistent, safety felt temporary, stability felt uncertain. You may have seen arguments you were too young to process. You may have felt responsibility too heavy for your age. You may have learned silence before you learned expression, and none of that was accidental. The enemy was trying to introduce confusion before clarity arrived. But hear me carefully. This was not because your family was weak. It was because your family was targeted. There is a difference. Some families carry future spiritual influence. Some carry leadership. Some carry healing. And when that is present, pressure increases. The enemy does not wait until the chosen one is grown. He attempts to shape the narrative early, hoping the chosen one will internalize pain as identity. This is why many chosen ones struggle with self-doubt despite being strong. You learned to question yourself before you learned to trust yourself. You learned to read rooms, to sense moods, to adapt quickly. Those were not personality flaws. They were survival tools. And survival tools later become spiritual tools when healed. Let me say something important. Growing up in difficulty does not mean God was absent. It means He was allowing formation under fire. Gold is not shaped in calm environments. It is refined in heat. And while it did not feel fair at the time, your spirit was being strengthened in ways comfort could never produce. The enemy hoped family wounds would break you, but instead they made you perceptive. He hoped chaos would numb you, but instead it made you sensitive to truth. He hoped instability would make you reckless, but instead it made you thoughtful. What was meant to damage your spirit ended up training it. Some of you became the emotional pillar of your family without realizing it. You absorbed pain quietly. You carried burdens that were not yours. You became strong for others while neglecting yourself. And now as an adult, you are just learning how to rest. That does not make you weak. It means you survived. The reason the enemy targets families is simple. Families are training grounds. They are where belief systems are formed. If he can introduce fear, insecurity, or silence early, he hopes the chosen one will grow up doubting their voice. But the enemy underestimated something crucial. God does not abandon His chosen in formation. He watches closely, and He intervenes in ways you often cannot see until later. There were moments you should not have survived emotionally, moments that could have hardened you permanently, moments that could have pushed you into darkness. But you didn't stay there. You may have visited it, but you did not build a home there. That was not luck. That was divine protection working quietly in the background. Let me help you release something. It is not your responsibility to fix your entire family. You were not born to carry everyone's wounds. You were born to break cycles by becoming healed, not by becoming exhausted. Healing begins with understanding. And understanding begins with truth. The truth is this: the attack on your family was never about destruction alone. It was about distraction. If the enemy could keep you busy surviving, he hoped you would never awaken. But awakening has already begun. You are here, You are listening. You are understanding. And that means the strategy has failed. Your childhood did not ruin you. It prepared you. Your family's struggles did not disqualify you. They refined you. And now, as you step into awareness, those old wounds no longer define you. They inform you, and information brings power. Take a breath here. You don't need to revisit every painful memory. You don't need to relive every moment. All you need is the understanding that what happened to your family had a spiritual context, and now that context has been revealed. They came after your family first because they knew you were coming, and yet you are still here, whole enough, aware enough, strong enough, and that tells me something with certainty. God has not finished with you. Section 5. The strategy of erasure and silence. Now listen to me carefully, because this part requires honesty and calm reflection. The enemy's most effective weapon against chosen ones has never been loud destruction. It has always been quiet erasure, not killing the body, but silencing the voice, not breaking the spirit openly, but slowly convincing it that it doesn't matter. This is why many of you felt invisible for long periods of your life. You were present, but unseen. You spoke, but felt unheard. You carried depth, but were treated as if you were ordinary or insignificant. That was not coincidence. That was strategy. If the enemy cannot eliminate a chosen one, he tries to erase their sense of significance. Silence is powerful. It works slowly. It creeps in through neglect, through dismissal, through repeated experiences of being overlooked. Over time, the chosen one begins to shrink their expression. They speak less. They dream less out loud. They doubt their own perceptions. And that is exactly what the enemy wants. A chosen one who survives but never stands. Many of you were silenced early. You learned that speaking truth caused conflict. You learned that expressing emotion created discomfort. You learned that being different made you a target. So you adapted. You became quiet, observant, controlled. You kept things inside. And while the world may have called that maturity, heaven saw it as a burden placed too soon. The enemy uses erasure because it doesn't leave visible scars. People don't rally around silence the way they rally around tragedy. Silent wounds are easily ignored, and chosen ones often suffer silently because they are strong enough to carry it. But strength without release becomes heavy over time. Another tactic of erasure is confusion, making you question your own experiences, making you wonder if you are overthinking, overfeeling, or imagining things. Gaslighting the spirit is a dangerous thing. Because once a chosen one no longer trusts their inner voice, guidance becomes difficult. And guidance is essential for destiny. This is why some of you spent years second-guessing yourself. You sensed things before they happened. You felt when something was off. But when you spoke, you were dismissed. Over time, you learned to silence yourself. But that discernment never left you. It simply went quiet, waiting for permission to speak again. The enemy also uses delay as a form of erasure. Delaying opportunities, delaying recognition, delaying breakthrough, hoping that prolonged waiting will convince you that nothing is coming, that your life will always be preparation without fulfillment. But delay does not mean denial. Delay often means protection. God does not rush chosen ones into environments that would damage them. Let me say something with authority. The years where nothing seemed to move were not wasted. They were stabilizing years. God was strengthening your inner foundation so that when movement came, you would not be shaken by success or crushed by responsibility. Silence does not mean inactivity in the spiritual realm. The enemy hoped that isolation would disconnect you from purpose. But isolation sharpened you. It forced you inward. It taught you self-awareness. It made you less dependent on external validation. And now, when you step forward, your confidence will not be fragile. It will be rooted. Some of you felt erased even within your own family. Like you didn't fully belong, like your values didn't align, like your vision was different. That was painful, but it was also revealing. You were not meant to blend in. You were meant to break patterns, and pattern breakers are rarely celebrated early. The enemy also uses shame as erasure, making you feel guilty for wanting more, making you feel wrong for questioning systems that hurt you, making you feel ungrateful for acknowledging pain. But truth is not rebellion. Awareness is not disobedience. God never asked you to deny reality to prove faith. I want to help you reclaim something today. Your voice, your inner knowing, your spiritual authority. Silence may have protected you once, but it is no longer required. You are not that fragile child anymore. You are aware now, and awareness shifts power. The enemy failed to understand one thing. Erasure does not work on what God has written. Heaven does not forget. Heaven does not misplace assignments. What God planted in your bloodline is still active, still alive, still moving toward fulfillment. You were never erased. You were preserved quietly, hidden until the right moment. And that moment is closer than you think. The silence is breaking, not with noise but with clarity. And clarity always restores power. Section 6. Why you survived when others did not. Now let me speak to the question you may have never said out loud, but have carried quietly in your heart. Why me? Why did I make it through when others around me did not? Why am I still standing when so many fell to despair, addiction, bitterness, or loss? This question has followed many chosen ones like a shadow. And today, I want to answer it without guilt, without fear, and without confusion. You survived because survival was not accidental, it was intentional. There was a divine decision made about you long before you understood the battle you were in. God does not randomly preserve people. Preservation always points to purpose, and the fact that you are still here tells me something with certainty. You were never meant to disappear quietly. Some of you watched people you loved lose themselves. You watched family members give up on faith, on dreams, on life itself. You tried to help. You prayed. You stayed silent. You carried grief that had nowhere to go. And sometimes you wondered why God rescued you, but not them. That kind of question can weigh heavy if it is not handled with truth. Let me say this gently. Survival is not favoritism. It is assignment. God does not choose the strongest. He chooses the willing. And many of you, even when you were confused, even when you were tired, even when you doubted, you did not fully let go of God. You questioned Him, yes, but you did not abandon Him. And that connection mattered more than you realize. You survived because there was something in you that refused to fully shut down. Even in your lowest moments, a quiet voice inside you kept whispering, "There has to be more than this." That was not optimism. That was the Spirit of God sustaining you when you didn't have strength of your own. Some of you were protected through intuition you couldn't explain. You avoided situations that could have destroyed you. You felt uneasy and stepped back without knowing why. You chose differently at key moments. Those were not coincidences. That was divine guidance operating beneath your awareness. God does not always shout. Often He nudges. There were moments when you should have broken, moments when the weight was too much. And yet, something held you together. That something was not willpower alone. It was grace. Grace that carried you when your mind was tired. Grace that guarded you when your emotions were overwhelmed. Grace that intervened when danger came close. Let me address something important. Many chosen ones carry survivor's guilt. You feel guilty for doing better, guilty for finding peace, guilty for healing when others didn't. But guilt is not humility. Guilt is misplaced responsibility. You are not responsible for everyone's choices. You are responsible for your obedience. Your survival was not meant to shame others. It was meant to testify, not loudly, not arrogantly, but through the way you live, through the peace you carry, through the wisdom you've gained, through the compassion you now offer. Survival turned you into a living message. You survived because your spirit was resilient. Not hardened, but resilient. You learned how to bend without breaking, how to feel deeply without drowning, how to sit with pain without becoming it. These are not small things. These are spiritual strengths forged in difficulty. God preserved you because you have the capacity to heal what others could not. Not by fixing them, but by modeling what healing looks like. Your life becomes evidence that cycles can end. That darkness does not have the final word. That faith can survive trauma. The enemy tried many times to wear you down completely, through fatigue, through disappointment, through loneliness, through delay. But each time you recovered, slowly, quietly, sometimes without anyone noticing. That recovery was not weakness, it was training. You were learning how to rise without applause, and that skill matters in the next season. I want you to understand this clearly. Survival does not mean your journey was easier. Often, it means it was heavier. You carried awareness others avoided. You faced truths others denied. You processed emotions others suppressed. And that work, though invisible, shaped you deeply. You survived because God needed someone in the bloodline who could see clearly without becoming bitter. Someone who could tell the truth without hatred. Someone who could carry authority without pride. That balance is rare, and it is not formed in comfort. Your survival is not the end of the story. It is the foundation. Everything you endured is now part of your wisdom. Every tear refined your discernment. Every delay strengthened your patience. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. Take a breath here. You don't need to justify why you survived. You don't need to downplay your progress. You don't need to carry guilt for healing. God kept you because He trusts you with what comes next. And that alone tells me this. Your survival was not just about you, it was about what God intends to do through you. Section 7. The bloodline stops with you. Now listen to me with a calm heart, because this is not a burden I'm placing on you. This is a truth meant to free you. The bloodline does not continue the same way it always has. It stops with you, not in fear, not in pressure, but in understanding. Many chosen ones misunderstand what it means to be a cycle breaker. They think it means carrying everyone, fixing everything, healing the past alone. That is not what God asked of you. God never asked you to exhaust yourself trying to redeem what He alone can heal. What He asked of you was alignment. When alignment happens, cycles break naturally. You are not responsible for the sins of your ancestors. You are not responsible for every wound in your family. But you are positioned to end the repetition. And repetition ends not through force, but through awareness and obedience. When truth enters a bloodline, darkness loses permission to repeat. This is why your awakening matters so much. Awareness interrupts patterns. Once you see clearly, you can no longer live unconsciously. And that shift alone changes generations. The enemy depends on ignorance. God works through understanding. Let me say something gently. You were not chosen because you are flawless. You were chosen because you are teachable, because you can pause, reflect, repent, realign. Because when you recognize something is wrong, you don't defend it, you confront it. That is rare, and rarity carries responsibility but not pressure. The bloodline stops with you because you are learning to respond differently. Where there was silence, you speak with wisdom. Where there was anger, you pause and discern. Where there was avoidance, you face truth calmly. These are not small shifts. These are generational turning points. Some of you are healing things you never personally caused. You are unlearning fear you inherited. You are questioning beliefs that were passed down without examination. That can feel lonely, but loneliness often accompanies leadership, and spiritual leadership is rarely loud. It is quiet consistency. You may not see immediate change around you. Family members may still act the same. Old patterns may still surface. That does not mean your obedience is ineffective. Change in the spiritual realm often precedes visible change. Seeds break underground before anything rises above the surface. I want to release you from something today. You do not need to announce that you are breaking cycles. You do not need to convince anyone. Transformation speaks louder than declarations. When peace replaces chaos in your life, people will notice. When stability replaces reaction, it will be felt. And when wisdom replaces impulse, the cycle has already shifted. The bloodline stops with you because you are choosing healing over denial. Many before you survived by suppressing pain. You are surviving by processing it. That difference alone rewrites the future. Pain that is acknowledged cannot pass on unchanged. God often chooses one in a generation who can see clearly enough to stop the flow of destruction, not by fighting it, but by refusing to carry it forward. You are learning how to put things down that were never meant to be yours. That is not weakness. That is maturity. Let me say this firmly. You are not behind. You are not late. You are right on time. Healing takes time. Awareness takes time. Undoing generational confusion cannot be rushed. God is patient with process. He is far more concerned with depth than speed. Some of you worry about the future, about whether you'll repeat mistakes, about whether you'll fail those who come after you. Fear is understandable, but it is not prophetic. Fear imagines repetition. Faith imagines transformation. And you are learning to operate from faith, even when uncertainty remains. The bloodline stops with you because you are learning discernment. You no longer absorb everything emotionally. You choose what you allow into your spirit. You set boundaries. You rest when needed. You question narratives that once controlled you. These are signs of spiritual authority awakening. Let me remind you of something important. God never ends a cycle without starting something new. Ending is not emptiness. It is transition. As old patterns dissolve, new patterns are forming. Healthier ones, quieter ones, stronger ones. You don't need to see the full picture yet. You only need to stay aligned, one obedient decision at a time, one healed response at a time, one moment of clarity at a time. That is how generations change. Take a breath here. You are not alone in this. God walks with those he entrusts with generational shifts, and he does not abandon them midway. What began with pain will end with peace. What began with confusion will end with clarity. The bloodline stops with you, not because you are carrying it all, but because you are finally letting God do what only he can do through you. Section 8. What the enemy failed to understand. Now let me speak with clarity and calm authority, because this is where perspective shifts. This is where understanding replaces fear. The enemy made a critical mistake with you. He assumed that pressure would weaken you. He assumed that suffering would shrink you. He assumed that delay would discourage you into surrender. But he failed to understand how God works with chosen ones. The enemy understands trauma, but he does not understand transformation. He understands pain, but he does not understand purpose. He understands destruction, but he does not understand refinement. And that lack of understanding cost him more than he realized. Every season that was meant to exhaust you actually educated you. Every delay sharpened your patience. Every loss expanded your compassion. You did not come out smaller. You came out deeper. And depth is dangerous to systems built on surface strength. The enemy thought that isolating you would make you dependent on approval. Instead, it taught you how to hear God without noise. You learned discernment in silence. You learned to recognize truth without crowds affirming it. That kind of clarity cannot be manipulated easily. He thought that confusing your path would make you abandon it. Instead, confusion forced you to seek God personally, not borrowed faith, not inherited belief, personal conviction. And personal conviction is unshakable. The enemy underestimated your ability to adapt without losing integrity. You changed, you evolved, you matured, but you did not compromise your core. That balance is rare. Many people adapt by abandoning values. You adapted by strengthening them. He also failed to understand that pain does not automatically corrupt. Pain reveals what already exists inside, and what was inside you was resilience, humility, curiosity, and faith. Pain did not introduce these qualities, it exposed them. The enemy believed that repeated disappointment would make you cynical. Instead, it made you wise. You no longer expect blindly. You discern, you observe, you listen. Wisdom grew quietly where naivety once lived, and wisdom protects destiny far better than innocence alone. Let me say something important. You did not become cold. You became selective. You did not become distant. You became discerning. There is a difference. Discernment is not lack of love. It is love guided by truth. And that truth now governs your choices. The enemy also misunderstood your healing process. He assumed that because it took time, it wasn't happening. But healing is rarely loud. It happens in layers, in reflections, in changed reactions, in quieter thoughts, in softer self-talk. One day, you realized you were no longer reacting the same way, and that realization marked progress. He failed to understand that God does not waste suffering. Nothing you endured was meaningless. God repurposed every wound into wisdom, every tear into discernment, every setback into strength, not instantly, but intentionally. The enemy tried to convince you that your sensitivity was weakness, but sensitivity became your strength. It made you attentive. It made you empathetic. It made you spiritually alert. You sense what others miss. You feel what others ignore. That awareness is not a liability. It is an asset. He also failed to understand timing. The enemy rushes destruction. God allows formation. The delay you resented was protection. God was keeping you out of environments that would have exploited your unhealed parts. When you finally step forward, you will do so whole, not desperate. The enemy assumed that survival meant stagnation. But survival was your preparation phase. You were learning endurance, learning emotional regulation, learning spiritual boundaries, skills that cannot be rushed, skills that sustain long-term purpose. Let me speak to your heart here. You may feel like you lost years, but you gained depth. You gained wisdom that shortcuts cannot produce. And when purpose unfolds, you will move with clarity instead of chaos. That matters more than speed. The enemy also failed to see that your faith was not based on comfort. It was forged in reality. You believe because you have seen God sustain you. You trust because you have lived through proof. That kind of faith does not collapse under pressure. You are not fragile. You are refined. You are not delayed. You are prepared. You are not behind. You are aligned. The enemy thought the story ended with survival, but survival was only the beginning. Now comes expression. Now comes clarity. Now comes grounded authority. And here is the truth he never understood. When a chosen one becomes aware, fear loses power. Confusion loses influence. Silence loses control. You see clearly now, and clarity always shifts outcomes. What was meant to destroy you ended up developing you. What was meant to silence you refined your voice. What was meant to delay you strengthened your foundation. The enemy failed, not because he didn't try, but because God was always ahead of him. And now, you stand not as someone escaping the past, but as someone prepared for what comes next. Section 9. Final alignment and spiritual seal. Now take a slow breath, chosen one, and let everything settle. You don't need to rush forward from here. Understanding has already begun its work inside you. What you heard today was not meant to excite you. It was meant to steady you, to bring peace where there was confusion, to bring meaning where there was pain. Your life was never a mistake. Your family story was never random. The pressure you endured was not punishment, it was preparation. And the fact that you are still standing tells me something clearly. God has been with you the entire time, even when you didn't feel Him. You are not late, you are not behind, you are not broken, you are aligned. Alignment does not always feel dramatic. Often it feels like calm certainty, like quiet confidence, like no longer needing to explain yourself to anyone. That is where you are now. From this point forward, you don't need to fight the past. You understand it. You don't need to fear the future. God is already there, and you don't need to carry the weight of generations alone. What God began through you, He will sustain through you. Rest your mind, guard your spirit, walk forward without haste. Purpose unfolds best in peace. Before we close, chosen ones, if this message spoke to your spirit, give a like to this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share this message with other chosen ones who need this clarity and healing. And comment 777 in the comments as a spiritual seal, declaring that you are aligned, protected, and walking in God's divine purpose. Stay grounded, stay faithful, and remember this always: what God preserves, no enemy can erase.